1968, John H. Stracey stepped into the Olympic ring, wearing the colors of Great Britain and the weight of a quiet hope. A young lightweight with fire in his fists, he faced off against the world's best in Mexico City. But in the round of 16, his run was stopped by Ronnie Harris, the man who would go on to win gold. Defeat didn't break Stracey. It lit something inside him. The very next year, he came roaring back, sharper, stronger, and more focused. In 1969, he claimed the ABA light welterweight championship, proving to everyone, especially himself, that his story was just beginning. He stepped into the professional ring and made a statement. Santos Martins was gone in just 2 rounds. 1 fight down, 12 straight wins followed, 11 by knockout. But behind all the fireworks was a quiet truth. None of his early opponents were real threats. He was winning, yes, but nobody was watching yet. Then came fight number 13. Teddy Cooper. Not exactly a star, but the kind of fight that tests your patience. It ended in confusion. Cooper disqualified in the 5th. A win, but not the kind you celebrate. More fights came. More lessons. A draw with Frankie Lewis. A rough night with Marshall Butler. His first loss. 8 rounds of grit that left more questions than answers. Stracey dusted himself off, strung together 4 wins, and got his shot at the British welterweight title. It was October 31st, back at Royal Albert Hall. But the night ended in heartbreak. Stracey was disqualified in the 7th round. Another controversy. Another bruise, not just to the body, but to the soul. Still, he didn't fold. 5 more wins followed. No noise. No spotlight. Just work. Then came February 14th, 1973, Las Vegas. The undercard to Ali versus Bugner. Thousands watching. Stracey outboxed Danny McAloon and walked away with a unanimous decision. A quiet victory in a loud place. Then came June 5th. Stracey and Bobby Arthur met again. Unfinished business. This time, there was no controversy. No questions. Just a 4th-round knockout. And with it, the British welterweight crown. John H. Stracey wasn't just a name anymore. He was a champion. By 1974, Stracey wasn't fighting for recognition anymore. He was fighting for history. On May 27th, under the Paris sky at Stade Roland Garros, John H. Stracey stood across from Roger Minitry, the reigning European welterweight champion. The air was thick, the crowd restless. Stracey didn't flinch. 8 rounds later, it was over. Minitry was down. Stracey was the new king of Europe. It wasn't luck. It wasn't hype. It was a man who had been through the mud. Controversial losses, lonely wins, and all the nights no one talks about. And now, the crown was his. But champions don't sit still. On April 29th, 1975, at the Royal Albert Hall, Stracey defended his European title against Max Hebeisen. It wasn't a drawn-out war. After 6 rounds, Hebeisen's corner called it off. Stracey's hands were raised once again. He wasn't done rising. The world title was now within reach. By late 1975, John H. Stracey wasn't just climbing. He was knocking on the gates of boxing history. It was the way of the sport back then. If you held a continental title, you didn't beg for a shot at the world crown. You earned it. Stracey had done more than enough. 5 straight wins. A statement victory over Ernie Lopez. The momentum was real, and the call finally came. December 6th, 1975, Mexico City. The Lion's Den. Stracey was flown in as the challenger, expected to lose quietly to the great Jose Napoles, a legend fighting in front of his own people, in what would be his final act. And right away, it looked like the script was writing itself. Stracey hit the canvas in the 1st round. The crowd roared, but Stracey got up, not shaken, just awake. What followed was a masterclass in grit and focus. By round 6, Napoles was swollen shut. The champion had no answer for the storm Stracey brought. Referee Octavio Marin stepped in. It was over. Stracey was the new WBC welterweight champion of the world. In front of a stunned crowd, he stood tall. Later, when asked about the early knockdown, he didn't flinch. He could have knocked me down in every round, Stracey said, but I'd have won it anyway. And just like that, on a night meant to be someone else's farewell, John H. Stracey stole the stage and wrote his name into boxing history. The crown was his, but in boxing, holding it is always harder than winning it. On March 20th, 1976, John H. Stracey returned to the ring as world champion. His opponent? Hegemon Lewis, a man who had chased world titles for years. But Stracey didn't flinch. 10 rounds in, Lewis was on the canvas. The belt stayed with the Brit. But time doesn't wait, and neither does fate. June 22nd, Wembley. Stracey faced Carlos Palomino, a California-based Mexican with fire in his gloves. For 12 punishing rounds, they battled. Then, in the 12th, it ended. Stracey was knocked out. Just like that, the title was gone. The pain didn't stop there. In his next fight, he stood toe-to-toe with a young Dave Boy Green. Stracey fought hard, but a badly damaged I forced the end in round 10. The years of war in the ring were catching up. But John H. Stracey wasn't the type to fade away in silence. May 23rd, 1978, Islington. One last fight. One last night under the lights. He knocked out George Weresfeld in 9 rounds and left the ring a winner. He had nothing more to prove. From East London to the world stage, Stracey's career was never about perfection. It was about heart, hunger, and fighting back when the odds weren't on your side. He didn't just fight. He lived every round. He gave the world unforgettable rounds in the ring. But life after boxing had its own rhythm. In 1975, the same year he became a world champion, John H. Stracey bought a quiet pub in Bristol, Norfolk. He didn't just own it. He renamed it after himself, the John H. Stracey. It was more than a business. It was a reminder that a boy from East London could rise, fight, and become something bigger. The name stayed until 2011, when it quietly returned to the Three Horseshoes. But Stracey was never one to just sit still. Back in London, he opened a boxing school, passing on a craft that had given him everything. Teaching, guiding, shaping young fighters, the way someone once did for him. Later in life, alongside his then-wife Michelle, John ran a hotel in Bournemouth. It came with a bar called the Ringside, fitting for a man whose life was built on bell sounds and fight nights. They raised a daughter together, Laura. Today, John H. Stracey is no longer chasing belts or titles, but he's still in the fight. Now, as a proud patron and supporter of the Devon-based King's Boxing Academy, he's giving back to the sport that gave him his story. He's not just remembered for the knockouts or the titles, but for what he gave, how he carried himself, and how he stayed grounded even when the world was watching. Because champions aren't made by belts. They're made by what they do after the final bell.